referenced earlier about ignorance, which you'll feel free to define when you say that in this context what you mean. But one area of it in the video that came up was there seems to be a sort of pervasive misreading of history.
That's right.
In a general sense, but also one specific thing that you challenge. We're gonna play a little bit of the video is a lot of effort being put into never blame white people for any part of what has happened in the past.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
Let's roll just a little bit of the video demonstrating some of that.
Now, you mentioned Black Wall Street, brother, and I want to be very real with you.
Yeah.
Black Wall Street was Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Greenwood District, where black people built their own community, had their own self-sustained community, beautiful economy, making it for themselves, and white people destroyed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't policy. It was white people.
Well, it wasn't white people. It was
no. Let's be very clear. It was white people.
No.
It
was those white people.
It was white people in that community. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And let me just say this: Elaine, Arkansas, Rosewood in Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, the Sweet Auburn District, North Nashville, and Nashville, Tennessee. Each one of these communities were booming black economies where white people, not in the same place, but it was the same group of people every time, destroyed those communities. So you can't say it's policy when when black people do what they need to do and build for themselves, and white people destroy it.
Yeah.
So why is it that you would frame it as a policy thing?
I didn't frame it as a policy thing.
We can rewind it.
We don't have to rewind it. He did. He specifically said it was policy. And so, there's like this effort to like extract white people from history and then abstract it to policy, when we could also talk about who passed those policies at that point. But I talked a little bit about that.
So that was Topher. He's a Christian rapper. He has 2.5 million plus followers on TikTok alone. Like he's a big deal and a big kind of MAGA influencer. And he's educating people online, and yet he doesn't believe that the Tulsa Greenwood race massacre was race-based. I don't know. He didn't believe that black people, I challenged him on this, but he didn't believe that black people were better after the policies of Lyndon B. Johnson, who, might I add, signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Which he finally admitted he liked.
Eventually he said, hey, I can get on board with that, but what about the Fair Housing Act? I think about my grandmother, who was born in 1942. She's just as beautiful as ever. And she was in her 30s before she was protected as a citizen around housing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, of course we're better after those things. She never attended a non-segregated school, right? And it's not just my grandmother. Both of my parents were born before segregation came to an end. And so my point is that like we're living in a better country today than we were before. And I don't think that's debatable. And yet for folks like my friend Topher there, who I had lovely interactions with. I think he's a fine person, just maybe misguided. For him, there's this nostalgia of a time in the past that actually never existed. And I found that to be true in a number of senses. I also talked to Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, who said, well, back after slavery, black people were Republicans. Well, why did they stop being Republicans, right?
That's a great follow-up question.
There's a very clear history here of the way that the GOP aligned itself with white power and white political power to gain the Democratic vote in the South. And so anyway, the history thing is a bit weird.
So, I don't want to cut you off, Sharon. If you have a question, feel free.
So just quickly, this makes me wonder how it's not just simply indoctrination. Because as you sat there and you all were interacting, it was a choice, I think, to remain closed to, you said, you got to run back the tape. And he just did not want to accept it. And I wonder what they gained. Besides money, what does he gain from spewing this? And by that, I mean from perhaps a white audience or white approval, which is a very real thing too.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. It depends on how deep we want to go, right? We're living in a country that is built on white supremacy. Can we just say that clearly? It is at the foundation of this country's sense of self. And so as a black person in this country, the white gaze is placed upon, it is always there. And to have the approval of white people, for many black people, is aspirational. It's something that you want. And this is true, I believe, of almost any Black person born and raised in this country. And so I think there is something psychological here. There is something that W.E.B. Du Bois talks about with this double consciousness, this awareness of yourself and the awareness of yourself as it is viewed from the perspective of a white gaze. And so all of this, I think, is at play here. And I don't want to do too much, psychologizing, but I do think that there is something gained for these individuals from being revered, respected, accepted in predominantly white spaces. They see themselves as better because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, you're diving into this particular group, but we also can't ignore that, the right and, the conservative Republicans, Fox News, have always had places for members of groups they demonize to come on and participate in the demonization. It is not just Black MAGA or whatever. You have a couple of gay Republicans that participate in this, and maybe one or two trans Republicans and certain Asian Republicans. And so it's certainly a thing that, were I to be a white supremacist Republican, I'd probably want to set up a system like that. I could see how that would be useful. So when you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?